we spent a lesson recapping this stuff, yeah? So if you remember, I said factorizing the basic ones, we're not rewriting this. Factorizing the basic ones, expanding, factorizing. Why did we want to factorize? Because factorize, we can then use the null factor law to solve it equaling 0, and that finds these 2 points here, the x-axis intercepts. We know them, we can find the vertex, lots of things we can know. Go to this last fact. It's a little bit that null factor law is because two factors, if they multiply to make 0, then one of them must be 0. It doesn't matter what the other one is, if one of them is 0, our answer is 0. Right, so then we did, well, here's a quadratic equation equaling 0. I can't solve that as it is, but if I factorize it, I then know either the 8x is 0, which means x has to be 0, or the x plus 3 has to be 0, which is x is negative 3. Then we said, oh, is it always just going to be the opposite? I think the question was. And I said, no, is that x minus 5? Well, that would be 5. It looks like the opposite. But this is 2x plus 3. So we write 2x plus 3 is 0. We solve for that, and that's one of the other solutions. So we don't just have whole numbers. You're not writing this down. You've already written this, or it's on the video. Okay, I want to move on to the next thing. If there's anything missing in your notes, watch the video I put up and do that at home in your. So I then said, well, what if you cannot factorize? So I gave you an x squared plus x minus 13 is equal to 0. Clearly that's not going to factorize because nothing multiplies to make 13 and adds to make 0. And I said, right, if we can't factorize, we're going to use the formula. And I gave you a formula. Now, it used to be that you had to memorize it, but I don't think that's necessary. You get it in a formula. Like in your e-assessment, for those of you that have looked, you'll have seen there's, for each question there's different tabs. If you click on one tab, it will give you the formula that you need for that question. That's why it's important that you look at these things, yeah? Because if you go through all the, oh, I didn't know I could click that tab. Oh, I didn't know I could click the calculator and use the calculator. Oh, I didn't know I could paste from the calculator into my answer box. Like, that's why we do it. So the formula is that. So to find the solution to x, x1, x2, we've got this formula. And I said, well, a quadratic is ax squared, so something x squared, plus something x, so bx plus c. And the a, b, and c relate to the formula in that way. Okay? And we're going to use it to do one of these together. And then you can do the rest. So you can see it's practice 5, page 431. So the one I'm going to work on now is the first one. So if you can write that down, and then we'll do it together. So often it will say use the formula too. Now there's one thing, there is a real clear tip. Let's have a look at this question. This question, it just says solve for the variable, in this case for p can be x. If possible, using the quadratic formula, leaving your answers exact. All right? Some of them, though, it says quadratic equation, giving your answer to one decimal place. Now, as soon as it says things like that, you know you're going to use the quadratic formula.
When it says things like
leaving your answers exact or giving your answers to 1 or 2 decimal places. As soon as it says something like that, if it says 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places, you know you're not going to be able to factorize. Okay? So let's look at this. We're going to use the formula. So solve using the formula. And the formula is, to rewrite it, x equals minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So remember before what I said, the important bits are we've got b and a b, we've got an a and an a, and we've got a c. And we've got to determine what b, a, and c needs to be. So do you remember which one was which? So a equals b equals c. So I would always write this when I do this language. Okay. A is they know if you don't know. Good. Go on then. Almost. A is 4. Because A is the number before the variant. And it's just the number. B is the number and sign before one in the middle. And C is the number and sign at the end. So in this case, A is positive 4 because it's positive 4. B is positive 8. And C is negative 1. So we've got to put those numbers in place. Now, just to say, this is no longer x equals, it's going to be p equals y. Because it's p's and not x's. Doesn't change anything. Okay? Right, let's write it. So this will be minus whatever b is. So I'm going to put minus 4. Oh, no, that's not right, is it? Minus 8. Plus and minus, I'll explain that in a second. The square root, why do you put 9? Plus and minus, I'll explain it in a bit. Yeah. It'll make sense in a second. B squared is then 8 squared, and we minus 4 times whatever A is. So A is 4 times whatever C is, and C is -1. Okay. Now I square root. And I will put a bracket all divided by 2 times whatever A is again. So just to make it clear, C is the -1. A is the 4 and the 4th. And the B, okay, is the 8 and the 8. Now I put it in brackets just to communicate clearly, but you don't need those numbers in brackets, do you? Right? So we can say P equals all of that. What do you think you need to do now? Well, we need to start working some of this stuff out, don't we? Step by step, using the correct order of operations. So, we are going to, first off, I'm just going to write that P equals, well, that's just -8. Yeah. Can I get you not just to chuck it all in your calculator just because mistakes get made? We'll use our calculator in a bit, but we'll do it in stages. So this is plus and minus the square root. Now, I'm going to do the square root bit. I'm going to still write it, but I'm going to do it in stages. So what is 8 squared?
64.
64. So that's the 8 squared. Minus, now you will notice that 4ac, so that bit there, 4ac, you have to do multiplication before subtraction, right? So that's why I put it in brackets to show that I have to do all of this bit first. So that's why I've left it together. I'm going to do 8 squared is 64, but then I'm going to minus, what's 4 times 4 times negative 1?
-16.
Good, negative 16. We've not needed it. And you notice how I've kept it in brackets, these brackets here? Why did I do that? Because I've got a minus and minus. Yeah, no. I'll tell you in a sec. Underneath, I can do that. It's 2 times 4 is 8.
I think I'm gonna have that right
Now, you asked the question, which is subtracting 16 the same as subtracting negatives? What do you think? I said it's not. Anyone else have a comment? So we've got, I'm just going to take this bit here, 64. I'm saying subtract negative 16. You're asking, is that the same as 64 subtract 16?
now. No, I see it.
You see it?
Yeah.
Because when you subtract a negative, it's like doing 64 plus 16, isn't it? Yeah. Well, sort of. So if we've got that, what does it become? I've got p equals still negative 8 plus and minus the square root of 64 plus 16 is? So 64 subtract negative 16 is the same, so it's not that one, we know that. 64 plus 16 is? 80. All still divided by 8. Now you can see I'm writing a lot of stuff out. There's a reason for that. It's because now I can check every stage of my work and check if there's any mistakes. And there's a lot of things going on. Well, like if you were an M1, this will be 7 questions to do. Right? Because each separate calculation for them is a question. For you guys, one question has 7 parts. So we're best off keeping a track of what all those parts are, right? So that's why I've done it. I've kind of done first step, put all the numbers in. Second step, start working bits out. Next step, work a little bit more out. Now we're at a stage where I can discuss with you this bit here, all right? The plus and minus bit. So what we do is this actually separates into the two. Remember we normally have 2 answers?
Yeah.
So the answers are, the first answer is actually going to be negative 8 plus the square root of 80 divided by 8. And the second answer, 2, is going to be negative 8 minus the square root of 8 divided by 8. Okay, so we've got 2 possible answers. Okay, so what we're going to do now, look, we're going to work these 2 values out. I am going to use the thing that you are, basically this is what the calculator will look like on the e-assessment. All right, so let's work out what we need to do. The answer we need, all right, is, this is why it's useful, look, you can use these buttons. So if I want to do a fraction or division, well this, I don't think this will change, I can press this button on it and I can actually do minus 8 plus the square root of 80, all divided by 8. And if I press enter, that's my answer. Could you do that with your calculators and just confirm you get the same answer? It will be. Well, we'll have a look in a sec. Both of them, yeah. So that's what I get, 0.118. So I'm going to write that down. And that's the thing, yeah? You've got to learn to use your calculator. P1, I've got 0.118. On your calculator that you're using in your hands, remember there's a different button. So for the -8, got to use the button on your calculator looks like this. That's a negative button. Let's have a look. Okay, so let me just ask you this. So I'm going to write, this has been written, -8 plus square root 80 divided by 8. That's what's been written on the calculator. Tell me why the wrong answer. Yes, so if you do this, all right, it's doing 80 divided by 8 and then doing the square root. So what do we need to do? We need to change it to close the brackets, so it's doing the square root of 80. All right, I might then even press equals, get my answer, and then press my answer divide by 8. Get the same answer, yeah?
So I, on that, then I chose.
Press equals. Now divide by 8. Yeah? Confirm or not confirm? Yeah. So what do you get for this one? What's P2?
Why does it not fit in all the way?
Although over where? Because it's the calculator screen. That's why it uses brackets. This is the calculator screen. Should record. This is exact form, but it needs to be simplified. But that's another thing. I don't know whether you've done it. So simplifying certain, it can be simple. Right? This is rounded. Yeah. So not exact. Now, in the second question, it says round it to 1 decimal place, but quite often it will say round it to 2 decimal places. What would you round these two numbers to 2 decimal places? So P1 is 0.118, but P1 is actually going to be 0.12 to 2 decimal places. P2 is negative 2.118. P2 is negative 2.12 to 2 decimal places. Got that? So it depends how. Now, other question actually says to you, give your answers to 1 decimal place. So P1 would actually be what to 1 decimal place? 0.1 to 1. P2 would be 0, sorry, not 0 at all, negative 2.1. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So just to confirm then what we've done. Took a question, we identified what A, B, and C was. The signs, there's no plus there, so we know it's not a negative. Take the sign with the number, sign with the number. That's what you put into the equation. And we work all that equation out carefully, step by step. All right. Until we get to this point where it's simplified as far as we can go. But then we need to split it into the plus and the minus versions, and that's where we get our two answers. Now, I'm not going to tell you why, but this one says, remember to set the equation to 0, that we can look at that. But this one, we're going to do this one. I want you to do question 2. It says, solve if possible. All right, let me say if possible. Now, if the answer says if possible, what does that suggest? Not probably, but sometimes one of them it might not be possible. So I'd be interested to see how will I know if it's not possible or not. So I'm going to get you to work on these ones, please. All right. You've got X's, you've got A's. They're all equal to 0 at the moment, so we'll come back to this thing not equal to 0. Yeah. I would like you to have a go at least one of these. Get through a bit of time. Got enough time. 15 minutes. It might be interesting if you could all do a different one. Because one of you might come up with one that come up yourself. And it'd be interesting to know which one you have. Yeah? The first solution. There are two solutions, yeah? Well, because it's plus and minus, you always have two, but sometimes the two solutions will be the same number. You might find. And sometimes there's no possibles. Okay, go. Okay. So I've taken, there's no number there, so I know that number is a 1. So what I'm looking for is this number before the x squared, this number before the x, and this number. They become these three numbers. Right? The formula is x equals, because we're looking for the value of x, x equals minus whatever b is, plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. So I replace this b with negative 2. So this is where, remember I use brackets, so minus 2. Minus 2. Now that's important. Because this is because b is minus 2. I have to have minus whatever b is. Now that's
a minus.
What's minus minus? Positive. That's why it's important. Because minusing a minus becomes positive. Whereas if I just wrote minus 2, it would be minus, it would be wrong. So that's why I put it in brackets. That basically represents, that's what b is. B goes in the brackets, yeah? Same way. Plus and minus the square root of what it's going to be minus 2 squared. Now that's important because minus 2 squared is actually positive 4, not minus. Okay. It's where negatives are. Minus brackets 4 times 1 times c is negative 4. So I'm putting the negatives in that. 4 divided by 2 times whatever a is. Well, I just put negative numbers in. So I know they're negative numbers.
So you don't have.
You don't have to. But then you get negative signs. and then it's start. Is that negative? Or is that stay? So it's good to keep the negatives in. I just find that.
And then you just sum it up.
Now you just work. It. Yep. So you now put those numbers in place. Yes. Yeah. Just like I just did in this one that I took correctly in yours, you correctly did A, B, and C. So then what I did was A, look, places the A. So that's this thing here. Look. 1 is A. Right? And then B is -2. B is -2. So anywhere where there's a B, okay, here and here, I put my -2. Right? Now, as Marley's suggested, like, why am I putting it in brackets? Well, I'm putting it in brackets for the negative matter. This is minus B. If B is negative, I'm asking for minus the negative. So my next line of out, for instance, with Marley's would be x equals, well, minus makes it a positive. Now that's not always going to happen. But in this case, it becomes +2 plus or minus and so on. So that's what your next step is to replace the negative with the number that you correctly identified. And you need to do the same thing. What's your A, B, and C in yours? Yeah. Recording. Exam tip number 1. Write the formula with no numbers in. Even though the formula will be on the screen, put the formula down. It's in the formula. Then don't try and skip that stage. You've got to do the single page. I'll have to write that formula out, and that will help you. Oh, there's then you can start putting those into the formula like I did that. Well, your equation now has an x, doesn't it? This is an x. Previously, it had a p. But your one, it had Luke's has an a, so it should be a. Doesn't change the formula. Yours would be a. That those a's. That's all. What numbers before the x? 1. 1 and 1 and an x. And there shouldn't be any x's. That's